Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of iCast Fireball, an actual play 5e D&D adventure where we go through the campaign, A Tyranny of a Dragons. I'm Thomas, your DM for this adventure, and around the table we have...
Malamara,
Lance Thalen,
and Fleeple.
So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about where we left the Jhank Squad previously, having no opportunity to discuss what they did in the remaining month in Waterdeep. They were immediately thrust narratively into the Council of Waterdeep, meeting with Leosin beforehand, checking in, sharing information, and finally looking at the box, the treasure chest from Resmir, to look at the blue dragon mask. Unfortunately, discovering that the blue dragon mask was not there. And although there was quite a few gems, coin, and just wealth to be had in that treasure chest, it did not please Lance, which prompted him to leave and led to a very heartfelt, very information-filled conversation between Mal and Lance. While Fleeple picked up the pieces, prepared himself, and all three of them entered in, walking in with Leosin, promising to assist where they be called upon, and promising to share their experience as they are the boots on the ground. That is where we join our adventurers this week. So, the three of you, following after Leosin, walking into the massive, grand chamber. It is a circular chamber with seats all around in tiers, almost like bleachers, but more refined, more elegant. The chairs are very fine, some of them more fine than others, but there does appear to be a central location, not only in the center for someone to speak, but there is a chair on the south side of the room, which has a couple of chairs, one of them the most ornate chair in the entire room, however, being placed there where the king themselves are able to sit and hear the proceedings. There are a number of individuals already in this room, and most of the chairs, surprisingly, at least to Leosin, are filled. There are, as I mentioned, a couple tiers worth of chairs, and I'd say there are good, probably 85 chairs that are either filled or going to be filled by the time everybody shows up. And there are people from all walks of life here. You have elves who their clothing is more plant than it is material. You have dwarves who are laughing raucously while they are chugging down an ale at the beginning, before the meeting begins. You have tieflings who are casting spells for one another and exchanging notes with some humans regarding their spell books. And you have some furbolgs that are examining their staff, and you have some that are in very fine clothing, Waterdeepian clothing as well. Then you have some orcs, not many, but at least two, and they seem to be sitting by themselves in the very back. But Mal, you pick up on it immediately. As you make eye contact with them, both of them look down at you and just nod solemnly towards you. The rest of the hall is filled with just a variety of people, races, color, lineage, class. There is a true melting pot here in this room, and it seems that every walk and shape of life seems to be accounted for here. The room goes silent after a few moments of you sitting there, and everybody stands as the King Conrad, enters the room with two attendants, two people walking behind him. He sits in his chair, and as he sits, everybody sits down to the ground. There is a formal announcement of the meeting beginning, calling the meeting to order, the minutes being read from the previous meeting, but this one being a special conference. We recognize this special conference being brought together, requested even, by the Harbor Organization, led not only by their leader, Remy Haventree, who has recently undergone an unfortunate loss with her husband passing,
but also under the direction and persistence of one of their head members, Leosin.
And he gestures to Leosin, who nods and gestures to the rest of the room, acknowledging his presence and who he is.
At this time, with no additional business to conduct, we pass the time over to the Harper organization. Leosin, the floor is yours.
And Leosin stands up, shaking a little bit, but having heroism, even though cast a few minutes ago, emboldening him as he looks to you, Fleeple, and just clutching his pendant of Bahamut, walks to the center of the chamber.
Friends, colleagues, strangers, everyone here from all walks of life, you have been summoned, requested, pled with to show and represent not only your organization, your class, your race, but your belief system, to discuss something of utmost importance that is threatening, silently and not so silently threatening the very land of Faerun. I apologize if I seem earnest, or if I seem dire with anything that I say, but my urgency is true, my urgency is real, and I wish to discuss the threat that the cult of the dragon has upon the lands of Faerun at this time.
The room not erupting into any raucous noise, there's just some slight murmurs as some people turn and discuss some things with each other as Leosin continues to go on in his speech. They have been made aware that this is why they were brought to this position. They were brought down to their to their separate homelands to discuss the cult of the dragon. So it's no surprise to them.
I wish to allow discussion to be made, but if you would allow me the time to express some of the findings and fears that I have, and the Harper organization shares, we can present the facts up front and allow questions to be asked during, but mainly after, so that we can prevent confusion, wandering discussion, and, just overall chaos in the meeting.
I am going to roll a performance check for Leosin here, just to see how he's going to be well received, how well he is going to be to pass his information on in this large proceeding here. This first leg, Leosin, the nerves have gotten to him just a little bit, so the next information will be a little bit shaky, but we will continue.
I was researching of my own volition into the cult of the dragon quite some time ago, just to make sure that they were in check. We had heard rumors of their continued, rather growing influence this side of the Honorok Desert, as they previously had been working within that realm and further to the east, closer to the Wizards of Thay and their organization. We just wanted to investigate them, to check in and see what was going on, and there was some increased foot traffic, and there was some increased recruiting going on in some of the major cities, and not to ramble on too much about that, I had found myself in a little town of Greenest, where I had identified where the cult of the dragon was going to hit. It appeared that they were attacking some local villages near Greenest, and for those of you unfamiliar, that's in the southeastern portion of Faerun, and they were trying to gather a lot of wealth and bring it where we weren't sure, but it seems that they were robbing and raiding these villages,
and his nervousness is definitely starting to show, and he's starting to lose a few people. Lance
is going to lean over to Fleeple as that's being shown, and he's just going to whisper to Fleeple, he's being a pretty bad constable right now. I think he needs a good constable to back him up.
Would it be impropriety? What is the word?
Improper?
Improper, yes. Yes, I was trying to think of impropriety, but I was trying to make it more complicated than it needed to be.
You had the draconic word in your mind, but you couldn't get it into the common one.
Yes, would it be improper if I were to just, jump on down there and be like, hey, everybody, all of the most proper and powerful people in the Sword Coast, listen to me for a moment?
Lance just kind of thinks about that and thinks of how much he hates this pompousness of the circumstance and just how he's like, all these people are acting like, oh, we're so important, but yet they all have flaws, yet they just have more money to cover it up. And he just thinks of like this little kobold just showing them all up and being like, I'm here to tell you what's up. It just gives him so much joy. And Lance just like, as Fleeple asks that question, he just kind of looks at him and go, I think you've got this spot.
Oh boy. Might as well. I'll pat myself on the back and I'll like grab a scroll out of my satchel so it at least looks like I have some reason to be approaching, and I will kind of start heading down there into the middle, and I will reach up with my scroll, kind of hand it up towards Leosin and kind of tug on his robe, and when he looks down just to be like, do you need a little bit of help here?
That might be good. In Greenest, I was, after being dragged to their camp, I actually encountered a unique individual, a unique group of individuals. If I may introduce the first member, who is by my side here, Fleeple. He's a kobold who I thought was a part of the Cult of the Dragon, only to find out he was there to rescue me. He had infiltrated this caldera where the cult had resided, and he was part of... he was my ally in that time. Fleeple. I turn the time over briefly to Fleeple with the King's and the Council's permission, of course, as he gestures to the south portion. It was my intent to bring a specialist, or rather, as I have some general information, Fleeple and his two other members of his adventuring party, who they call themselves the Jhank Squad, they have key details that others might find not only important but wish to follow up on, to know specifics about the cult.
And as he's looking towards the king nods and gestures towards you, Fleeple, to take the stand.
Yes, Fleeple, you may share not only the results of the caldera, but anything else that you deem fit near the beginning of what we were discovering of the Cult of the Dragon.
I will turn towards the entirety of the crowd, and I will clutch my amulet, my talisman, which is dedicated to Bahamut, and I will turn first towards everybody and say, Bahamut Troth, blessings of Bahamut upon you all. And I will spread my wings in front of everybody to let the sort of slight platinum twinkling of the scales dazzle everybody in front of me.
There is a big shock and murmur of just like, oh. This is with Kobold giving the greeting to Bahamut, or rather the devotion to Bahamut with platinum tipped wings. It is a unique sight to behold, and there is some where Leosin was losing people. You have now drawn people back into this conversation without needing to roll currently.
All right, and I continue my spiel.
Hear the words, please, of a servant chosen by the Platinum Dragon to bring salvation to the Sword Coast and all of its surrounding environs. From the smallest of villages to the largest of cities, there lie underneath the surface servants of Tiamat, the Queen of the Chromatic Dragons. From the smallest reaches of Greenest, a little farming village in the middle of nowhere, to the very bowels of Neverwinter itself, we have encountered people who serve the Queen of Dragons. We have found them in places we would not have suspected to find them. There may be some in this very room, who knows?
Ooh, at that there's some murmurs, and somebody actually stands up in the back. It is a member of the Emerald Enclave. Stands up, and this is an elf who stands up and shouts above the din of voices and goes,
Now, you say that the cult is serving Tiamat. We have always known that, but What do you mean that they are directly serving Tiamat? The Cult of the Dragon has merely been an organization that has tried to enhance dragons' life after death. What danger do they pose more than that? I mean, we have encountered them trying to create Dracoliches, which, of course, is a danger. But what has changed? What do you mean that they are embedding themselves into the cities and serving Tiamat more openly, more brazenly? Is that what you're referring to? If so, how does that differ from them raising Dracoliches?
Tell me, my honored friend, my fellow servant of the earth itself, have you always been in a position of power within the Emerald Enclave?
Why, of course. Of course I have not. It starts with devotion. It starts with moving up and then finding yourselves in a spot where you can step up when no one else can.
And your ambitions have grown since the days when you were a young one.
Well, no more than any of the other alliances here, and those ambitions is to bring peace, stability, and, our ambitions are good. They are well-intentioned.
Well, an organization grows similarly. Though once they were a mere child of an organization interested only in what happened in the afterlife of dragons, they too have stepped up where they have seen no one else step up to fill in the desires of their master, the Queen of Dragons. We have seen their actions.
And I will reach into my satchel and pull out Mondath's robes.
We have spoken to people who seek to bring Tiamat back into the material plane from the Nine Hells itself, and we have slain them where they stood.
And on that note, Lance will actually start reaching into his bag, and I didn't realize this till I just looked at my notes. I have 4 daggers of the Cult of the Dragon. Lance will reach in and just start throwing them into the center where I believe Fleeple is at the podium to symbolize the fight that we've had with numerous factions of this group.
As Fleeple was talking about to bring Tiamat back from the Nine Hells, before he could finish, and he had to raise his voice to finish what he was saying, there is an uproar of responses. People are yelling out to being like, "You can't possibly know that," while a dwarf yells out and be like, "I knew it! I've known it all along! I could have seen it! We needed to root at that evil from the start!" While some people are talking to each other, some of the wizards being like, "How could that be possible? Her being thrust to the first lay of the Nine Hells? What sort of magic is that divine?" And there's just these scattered conversations that you are able to pick up as you look around. Mal, this cacophony of noise just around you, and Zaza crouches down on your shoulder, just sort of trying to shield themselves. The attendant calls for order. Order! Order! One at a time. If you have questions, you can direct them to the speaker on the floor, to Leosim. And everybody sorts to simmer down. But there's a furbolg that at the very top, who actually not at the top, at the near the bottom here, stands up and clutches their staff and reaches out and points to you. I mean, what proof and information do you have, little one, that can describe that they're trying to bring back her from the Nine Hells?
Why, I have the words of the one who wore these very robes.
And I will pull out the notes that Mondath had written and the letter that she had written that she was going to send to Rezmir.
A communication from one of the lower members of the organization to Rezmir, who we slew as well within Neverwinter.
Leosin goes, "Yes, and all of these notes have been verified, not only by the Harper organization, but myself personally. We have checked, rechecked, looked over there, read a massive amount of bad poetry to decipher their clues and to get the true nature of these notes. Rest assured, this information does come from the cult itself and has been verified by veritable sources outside of these adventurers and myself." Fleeple, I'm going to have you roll. You can have it be performance or persuasion, but I will let you do it with advantage with your wings and these sources really backing you up.
There we go. You got this sport. That does happen to be an 11.
Okay, sounds good.
With advantage?
11. Yeah, that was with advantage.
That was with advantage, yes.
So, an average response. There's still some hemming. There's still some hawing. There's still some people who are yelling in disbelief and be like, "The cult hasn't changed their patterns for centuries. Why would they change now?" And
Oh, well then why, would I ask?
And I will reach into my satchel and pull out the red wizard robes,
Are they working with the wizards of Thay?
and I will throw them to the center among all the daggers.
It's like a soap opera.
there's a woman who stands up in the center and she goes, "It is well known that the Cult of the Dragon has worked with Wizards of Thay. There has been intense magic that has been needed to create Dracoliches in the past. That does not mean that is not necessarily new information." And Leosin goes, "Agreed, my lady, agreed. That has not been new information, but I have it in confidence that this wizard, Rathmodar, was recently ostracized by the rest of the Wizards of Thay for trying to perform something so audacious and so outside the realms of the organization of the Wizards of Thay. Not only them," but he points to the rest of them, to the rest of the crowd, "but there is an entire sect of the Wizards of Thay that has been ostracized as well, and this robe belonging to Rathmodar was just merely one of them in that sect. Information is sparse, granted, of why they were ostracized, but we can theorize if they were ostracized from that exclusive organization itself. With that information that the cult is approaching a new tactic, a new goal, you would say, wouldn't that raise some of our eyebrows without this statement from our friend here alone?" And that seems to appease the crowd slightly here. And he looks at Leosin, whispers to you, Fleeple, and goes, "Thank you for stepping in. We have some momentum here. I'd like to bring out the eggs, in particular, from the hatchery. Do you find that wise to bring out now or at a separate point of the conversation?"
I am running so low on ideas for what to say to these people, so let's go for it.
All right, yes. If you feel that you need to step down as well, you feel free. You don't have to be caught down here with your wings unfurled if you don't wish so, if so to speak, you know. But I'll bring the eggs out, and you can stay if you wish.
We have further evidence here that in addition to what Fleeple has brought, a servant of Bahamut has brought out and presented to the council, we have, and he points to the very top, a woman stands up and with a few other individuals brings a crate down. We have the further proof that not only these adventurers, the Jhank Squad, did go to the caldera with me, but have those words verified with proof of an item brought from that caldera. It appeared that Mondath was looking over these dragon eggs.
And some people whisper at that as well as these dragon eggs are brought down from the steps, tier by tier by tier, to the bottom. These eggs, which are alive and well, and they appear to be unhatched currently.
These were left in a hatchery in the caldera, and Mondath was charged by the worm speaker Resmir to watch over these eggs and to ensure that they hatched were brought to fruition so that these dragon younglings could then serve and bring about the Cult of the Dragon's purposes as well.
At that, there appears to be, and Fleeple, you can see this standing in the middle, there is a distinct shift in some of the people in the stands. The Emerald Enclave, in earnestness, they seem to lean forward and look at the eggs and sort of like nod their head approvingly that the eggs were brought. And in fact, with that in mind, that same elf stands and goes,
"The Emerald Enclave," and points to you directly, Fleeple, "honors your decision to preserve life and to bring it forth rather than to destroy it when it could have been perceived as evil."
And so they bow their head towards you, Fleeple directly. While another organization, the Lord's Alliance, somebody wearing their banner stands up and goes,
It's quite dangerous, I would say, to allow dragon eggs, especially those of the chromatic kind, to exist and survive. The Lord's Alliance would have preferred if you had destroyed them on the spot and brought us word that they had been destroyed.
Yes, certainly. To return to my friend here, preserving life when it could have been destroyed as being perceived as evil. Tell me, friend, do you perceive me as evil?
Boom! Goes the dynamite!
I believe someone should be judged by their actions, of course, as we all have been judged by our organization's actions and the contribution we've had on Faerun. But I must admit...
Tell me then, what actions have these eggs committed that is of such great offense to you?
Well... And another person of the Lord's Alliance stands up and goes, "What I believe my colleague was trying to say is that these eggs could have very easily been swayed towards evil as good. And although the Lord's Alliance does prefer to err on the side of caution regarding evil or creatures of power being allowed to grow in unrighteous power, we recognize these eggs being brought forth now present no harm to us currently." And the first individual nods their head vigorously as they have just been covered, so to speak, by their other colleague of the Lord's Alliance, while this more in-control member seems to have sat down and allowed the conversation to continue. At this point, one of the women who attended the eggs down to the ground, she steps up and she starts to speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know me, my name is Remy Haventree. I am the head of the Harper organization, and not only do I confirm and support all that has been said by Leosin, and the newest member, and points to you, Fleeple, of Fleeple, I wish to continue on this line of reasoning. The words of Leosin and Fleeple should be enough to cause concern for each of our organizations and for the land of Faerun in general. But as most of you have known, that my husband recently passed, I have withheld information until this time for reasons which I hope are apparent, but which has brought me to not only encourage this investigation by Leosin and others in my organization, but which has backed the entire Harper organization to seeing the Cult of the Dragon dismantled, or at the very least disrupt in their current goal. My husband, a masked lord of Waterdeep. And at that, there's just silence at that phrase alone. Did not die naturally, but was assassinated in our very home, in his very chambers. And she pulls out of her cloak a 5th dagger matching almost exactly the 4 that had been thrown on the floor by the Cult of the Dragon themselves. And this dagger, it is same shape, same design, but there is blood that is still caked onto the blade itself. It appears that Remy has not cleaned this dagger. I have left the dagger untouched, relatively untouched, for anybody who doubts my words and wishes to test, to investigate that this is indeed my husband's blood as he was murdered. This organization, this cult, has grown more ambitious as the years have gone on, but more ambitious within the months that have led to our meeting here today. We know that they are more active on this side of Faerun, but them brazenly murdering a Lord of Waterdeep is just further evidence of how far they will go, and they will not stop until their goal is achieved. They will not rest until they have achieved their vision. And as my organization has discovered, they do indeed plan to bring back Tiamat to this plane of existence. With Fleeple and Leosin's words, they held a lot of weight, but there was discussion that ensued.
With this woman's words, the head of the Harpers speaking so definitively and so passionately, there is utter silence for a good moment.
As this whole thing has been going on, Lance, keenly aware of possible infiltration, because he's never trusting, as we just established, he wants to be checking constantly for tells of anybody in this room. Obviously there's interest, there's anger, we've seen those things, but tells of specific, almost, again, sinister motives of possible people in here. Either potentially Zentarum infiltrators, cult infiltrators, someone who seems to be not, like when she brought out the dagger and everyone's like, oh, like someone who possibly is like almost not reacting in the same way, so that it could be like, oh, maybe this person like was like, yeah, I already knew we did that because I'm a part of that.
This is a full room of 85 people.
Yes.
I will allow the roll, but the DC will be very high.
Okay.
And it will be a perception check, not an investigation check.
Well, I was going to say insight, because I'm trying to determine the insight of people's
Insight
faces.
I will allow as well.
Yeah. That is a non-natural 20.
That's good.
Ooh, that is good. Your eyes are peeled, and you are looking at the audience everywhere. You're trying to look behind you as well, because as I mentioned, this room is circular, and you can't have your back against the wall to where everybody's visible, unfortunately, but you do have a good view of most of the room. And as you're looking around, there appear to be, as I mentioned previously, eager faces, solemn faces. There's some that are angry, and they've been shifting throughout the entire conversation. With your insight, and this may be like no-duh information, but I feel like it's important to point out that as Fleeple is saying a lot of this stuff, and the Harpers are laying things out, every single action seems to have a mixed reaction with the audience. For instance, the eggs. The Emerald Enclave was appreciative and almost like proud that the eggs were preserved, while the Lord's Alliance made their displeasure known. Every decision seems to be affecting some people in a good way and others in a negative way. And doesn't seem possible that every single person can be satisfied or fulfilled with the minute details. But with your insight of a non-natural 20, as the silence pervades this room, you can see a resolve coming over almost every single face that you are looking at. Some of the resolve is quite strong. Some of it's like, yeah, okay, we're going to do this. And others are like, okay, I know which way the room is going to vote type of a situation. So you see all ranges. You don't see anybody who's like, oh crap, that was me, or like gleeful at when they're talking about the cult's goals and plans. You just see that firm resolve coming amongst over every single organization of, okay, the weight of the Harpers, the thorough research, the investigation, and the actions of the Jhank Squad appear to have made a significant impact on this council at this point in time. The king speaks up.
I think I speak for the room. Remy, when we not only share our condolences and our sadness for the loss of your dear husband, but we also understand the gravity of the situation. As always, the Harpers are meticulous and very thorough in their investigation, which, for someone as myself who doesn't have a lot of time to go over the details of a given situation thoroughly, I appreciate wholeheartedly.
Onthar Froome stands up, actually, who you realize, oh, there's Onthar Froome. He goes,
The Order of the Gauntlet also has been working with the Harpers for just a little bit now, and we can confirm some of the results, rather some of the activity we've seen of the cultists, how it has changed and altered drastically. Why, they're even grabbing youths from some of the major some of the major cities. Waterdeep, Neverwinter, Baldur's Gate. These cities have individuals who would never even dare look at the cult, willing and speaking and talking to them. Something has changed, and I, for one, believe, the Harpers, that there is something that must be done.
Well, says the king,
I believe that we should hold a vote then, to form a coalition determined to bring down the cult of the dragon, or at the very least stop their current plan and goals in its tracks.
The attendant who began the meeting.
I call for a vote from those in the hall. Anyone present is able to cast their vote. The vote is simple: to form a coalition to bring down the cult or stop them from their current goals. The goal being defined as bringing back Tiamat herself to this plane of existence. All those in favor with the I condition, raise your hands.
And Lance is not going to raise his hand, but Lance is doing one more time. The reason why is he doesn't want to be distracted at all. He is trying to do one more big insight to see anybody giving any more signs of, even with their hands being raised, of any hesitations, if that's possible.
Go and roll another insight. I'll continue on in my description while you get those results. There are a good 67 hands that are raised. Now, mind you, I said that there were 85 total in the chamber, so not everybody has raised in the affirmative.
The votes have been tallied. 67 in favor of aye. For all of those who wish to say nay against the current line of action.
And there are 8 people who raise their hands. Most of them do appear to be from the Lord's Alliance, but there is one from the Emerald Enclave, one from the Order of the Gauntlet, and the rest appear to be from the Lord's Alliance, but one of them is the Attendant of the King. Not the one who's calling the votes, but the other one who hasn't spoken, who hasn't spoken up or drawn attention to themselves. They raise their hand. And the king looks over to them and sort of just like purses his lips and doesn't say anything.
The vote has been tallied for the nay condition. 67 aye, 8 nay. The vote has been passed. A coalition has now been formed. This meeting represents that coalition. Although representatives may be called, we consider the following organizations part of that coalition: the Harpers Organization, the Order of the Gauntlet, the Emerald Enclave, and the Lord's Alliance, in addition with the nobility of Waterdeep, led by the king himself. This coalition has passed.
At that, Leosin pipes up and goes,
We thank you for voting in this coalition. There is much to be done, and we can discuss this more in depth as we break off into various groups, meetings, and I'm sure this will be the one of many councils to come until we can get this resolved. But the Harpers have identified a few orders of business, lines of business we can do to stop or try to prevent the cult in the immediate future while we continue to investigate, or rather, in the actual investigation of how we can stop the cult of the dragon in their plans. 1.
And he's going to list some of the things that he's discovered that he shared with you and others that he has not shared with you. I'm going to break out of Leosin's voice just so my players here can truly understand what is being proposed here. 1. There is the rumors that have been talked about of the White Worm speaker going off, and although they are only rumors, word is that they are trying to get the White Dragon Mask back and trying to find them. Now, as I mentioned previously to you, Varum, I believe I said their name was, has been spotted in a northern location, and so Leosin pipes up, if we wish to possibly find the White Dragon Mask, or at the very least, capture, kill, whatever the council decides, this coalition decides. Worm speaker for the Cult of the Dragon, similar to what the Jhank Squad did to Resmir.
creating a power vacuum, destabilizing their goals. I feel that could be a worthwhile endeavor.
So that is a possibility for not only the Coalition to take on, but possibly the Jhank Squad, if it falls to them or they deem it necessary.
Along those same lines, however, we also have word of the Greenworm Speaker, near own vein, and I could defer to the Emerald Enclave, who brought the attention to me, actually. They have recently launched a number of attacks into the Misty Forest, which the Emerald Enclave has taken notice and has tried to not only prevent but rebuff and try to fix on their own.
A different individual, a dwarf, stands up and goes,
Aye, and it'd be right helpful if somebody could help, could step in, maybe help us out, as we've been trying to sacrifice a lot of our resources to take care of it ourselves. Yes, of course. We know that they have been working with a green dragon themselves, however, in these raids. So we could go after them and possibly destroy one of the chromatic dragons that are openly devoted to the cause of bringing Tiamat back, in addition to the Greenworm Speaker. It could be a two birds, one stone situation there.
And at that, a woman raises her hand, a sort of diminutive woman, meekly, and goes, excuse me, Leosin, Master Leosin, might I share some information that might be of use or beneficial to the Coalition?
Yes, of course. Please step up. Your name? Yes, I am Lady Darla Silmerhelf. Yes, Lady Silmerhelf. Please, Silmerhelf, step up and share your information if it is appropriate.
Thank you. She is very small. She is a halfling, very well dressed as she is a lady, but she is very meek and it is almost hard to hear her. She steps up to the platform in the center there, and as she looks around and goes, I apologize for interrupting, but as the Coalition has been formed and there is some actions that might be decided here and now, I wish to propose a third option, or rather some additional information which could present a third option here. I don't know if you all were able to feel it, but not 1 hour ago there was a profound silence that swept the land and caused my very bones to stir, and as I chatted with others and confirmed my results, that was by no accident. It was by magical means that had occurred, and I have information which I unfortunately cannot share how I know this information, which please forgive me for that. I cannot share the confirmed information as well as the Harpers have, as she looks back and she sheepishly looks towards the Harpers. But that profound silence was a result of a magic item being sounded across all of Faerun. The item in question has been called many names in many tongues, but is not foreign to Waterdeep, and it was the Drakhorn that had been sounded. Immediately, a human female mage, she stands up.
The Drakhorn? Did you say the Drakhorn? Did I hear you correctly down there?
Yes, I did.
The Drakhorn hasn't been seen in centuries. How do you know this information?
I apologize, and I do not wish to offend or bring any ire down upon me or my house, but I cannot share that information. I just happen to know that is a result of the Drakhorn. The king steps into the conversation.
Please, ladies, I appear to be at some sort of loss, and I apologize for this. Please, would you just mind describing to me what the Drakhorn is and the significance of that?
And before Silmerhelv is able to step in, the female mage who stand up, she goes,
The Drakhorn has been a source of speculation and rumors for centuries, my dear king. It is said and has been confirmed that when it was initially created, it was to call all dragons to it for a united cause. It is heard by the chromatic dragons, and only them can hear it. But regardless of where they are, their status, their age, and wherever they may reside, they hear the call of the horn itself. But it hasn't been seen for centuries, as I have stated. A reason why I wish to bring that up. I do believe that is what we all felt. The Drakhorn is sending its call to all chromatic dragons across the continent. Now, I feel that if we could find the source of that, or at least an expert on that, we might be able to identify a little bit more of what we can glean from the corpse of the dragon.
And this mage, the female mage, has sat back down, and she is talking furiously amongst her comrades there. Let's jump to Jacob, Lance, and your roll for your insight. What was it?
I have not touched my dice tray since.
Okay.
It is a natural 20.
Ooh, baby.
With a total of 27 for insight.
27. As you look around, not only in this conversation, but previous conversations, you're peering behind you, and you're peering around, and you see those that didn't raise their hands at all. Well, the first thing is who raised their hands in the negative. And as you look at all of them, you're able to be like, no, it's too obvious. Why would they raise their hand? Nay. Why would they do that if they really were part of the cult of the dragon? No. But you think about those that didn't raise their hand, and you seek some of those people out. And there is one individual in particular who you're able to single out. Very plain clothing, and they seem to be twiddling a small stick or cane in their hand, if you will. It's very small, but they almost, they're just like lackadaisically looking around, almost bored, but you're like, why didn't they vote? And as you watch them during all of the proceedings of the new information, you just focus in on them for 5 minutes, and you're like, I'm going to study them for the while new information's coming out. Although they're giving off this air of indifference, every single piece of information that is being shared, they're turning, they're noting, they're jotting quick notes on a piece of paper, they're looking to see who shares opinions, and you say to yourself, they know more than they let on. They're trying to put on an air of front, and you need to investigate why.
Which group are they sitting with?
They are actually not sitting with a particular group. They just are kind of like, there are some like obvious groups, but there are some people who are just sitting scattered. Like some people have friends in the Emerald Enclave and they're sitting next to somebody in the Order of the Gauntlet and vice versa. But they are displaying a pin of the Order of the Gauntlet is what you can see, but they have a very lithe figure. They're not in like heavy armor, but you're like, I need to follow them, so to speak. We go back with this information being presented to Lance. We go back. They've wrapped up, and Leosin saying,
well, it appears that we have a third option here that we could investigate, that we can look at as well. 2 of them, as they currently stand, are we can go after either the Worm Speaker for the White Dragons, the Worm Speaker for the Green Dragons, or we could investigate the Drakhorn and possibly an expert on this. And at that, they say, I think it'd be best to break the coalition, and if we could call upon maybe our separate groups to focus in on one of these. Let's all remain here and just speak amongst our organizations for the time being, and then maybe we can all come up with our own ideas of what we all could take on to help out. And with that, the coalition quote-unquote breaks, but nobody leaves. Everybody is just kind of like starts chattering, and Leosin comes over to you, the Jhank Squad, and is chatting with you and goes, all right, well, this has gone quite well, I would say. A lot better with once Fleeple stepped in here and helped me out, and Lance, your articulation, and of course. And not only is Leosin here, but Remy and the other members of the Harpers have walked over to you as well. So you're with the members of the organization of the Harpers. And Leosin just sort of like looks at each of you and goes, well, what do you think?
I mean, if all of the dragons are going to that Drakhorn thing, that sounds pretty dangerous, but also that sounds like a pretty exciting, like, powerful magic item that's kind of really cool.
This whole time, Lance has not taken his eyes off of that individual.
Yep. And they're chatting with some other members of, like, the Order of the Gauntlet, but that's about it. They're not moving. So Leosin goes, yes, as the strike team, I wanted to give you sort of first picks. And he looks over to Remy, the leader of the Harper organization. The Jhank Squad. Without you, we wouldn't have as much information as we have, and to that we are entirely indebted. If you're willing, which I feel you are, we wish to give you the first choice of which mission you would like to take. So we ask you, plead with you, which one of these three do you wish to take on? And with this decision hanging in the air, the three of you glancing at each other, Lance not taking your eye off this individual, we're going to end this week's episode of I Cast Fireball.
Ooh, baby.
No, don't stop there. Let's keep going.
We gotta stop.
Yes,
We've got to give our players time to think.
The suspense.
Think on their own.
I mean,
there are major decisions that are associated and possible consequences with each of these, just like there are with any decision.
I'm already pretty committed. I mean, last time we had a choice between following a caravan or going to a very obviously dangerous ghost dragon. This time around, I like the obviously dangerous big old group of dragons that's been summoned by this magical horn.
Well, we'll have to see what the Jhank Squad decide with the members of the Harper's organization. Is there additional information they don't know that will help sway their decision? You'll find out next time on I Cast Fireball. Players, thank you so much for joining. Ned, Jacob, and Mickey. But you listeners, thank you for joining us as we are diving into this diplomatic negotiations are pretty much done, but as we are diving into the nuts and bolts of where we're going to be going for not only the next part of the Jhank Squad, but for the podcast to see what you will be able to see. If you'd like to chime in on what you would like to see have happen, shoot us an email at icastfireball2020@gmail.com or shoot us a message on our social media webs there at icastfireball20 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. What would you like to see the Jhank Squad? Which of these three? Where do you want to see them go and do? And we'll see if you line up with what they have decided to go along with. So we wanted to give a shout out to some people here who have reached out to us via our email or social media pages. We've got somebody who reached out to us. Their name is Tyler. Tyler reached out and said that they don't usually reach out but for any sort of media that they consume, but they wanted to thank us as they are relatively new to D&D. Stranger Things is what really got them interested in it, which I think got a lot of people interested initially, and they've been able to scratch the itch by watching Critical Role and creating up 50 to 60 characters that they'll probably never play. Tyler, that's a real struggle. I can relate to that wholeheartedly. You should listen to any Crunch Squad episode I'm on where I want to play a monk or any other character that I talk about with Ned. They want to try out Storm King's Thunder, which I highly recommend. That is a beautiful adventure. Go try it out. It is so fantastic. But lastly, they really enjoyed our Crunch Squad deep dive episode into the monk class, and they are wondering if we can try an artificer Crunch Squad episode. So we'll have to see if we can work that into our schedule with Ned and see if we can get that over to Tyler in the next little bit here. But thank you so much for reaching out. Tyler, is great hearing from you. Wanted to give it a shout out to our sister podcast, speaking of Ned, who is the GM keeper for all of the adventures they've got going on there. They have many 1-month adventure Fate accelerated campaigns that they've got a whole year's worth of backlog. They have the first season of their Avatar Legends campaign, which is fantastic, and they just started their season 2 Blades in the Dao Fei campaign, which is an Avatar themed Blades in the Dark TTRPG. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. There's a lot of there's some shenanigans, but there's also some very good crunchy rules and meat that to have there. So go check it out if you were looking into not only new TTRPGs but a new podcast, and don't forget to leave them a 5-star review as well. Lastly, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends and fellow wacky adventurers. But until next time, I'm Thomas, your DM, and around the table we have
Malamara,
Lance Thalen,
And Fleeple.
Let's keep that fire going, everybody, and we'll see you all next time.